Welcome everyone, it is time for the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, welcome. You've found one of the best kept secrets in limited magic. And just as a reminder, if you enjoy the video, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so that other viewers have an easier time finding my content as well. One other quick note before I start is that I will be participating in the streamer event on November 9th. At 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be streaming on Twitch. You can see the set in action, you can watch me play the cards, and you can even ask me questions about the set that you might have. So if you like the guide and you like the content, come support the live stream and be part of the chat. So let's jump into this set. The mechanics are pretty simple and straightforward. We have Craft, which allows you to get more value out of artifacts that have been sent to the grave or artifacts that you have on the battlefield. You're able to combine cards that you've already played with other cards that you have in your grave or on the battlefield to make something stronger with more value late game. At first I was really excited about this mechanic, thinking that's really good value, but then a card did get printed that made me pause. And I think it's a common that we need to start by talking about, and it's going to be a Braid. The reason why a Braid is so important to point out is that it is an instant speed artifact removal spell for 2 mana at common, which means it's pretty likely if somebody's playing red, they'd probably have an Braid. If you go to Craft and you sacrifice permanents on the battlefield and you transform, the opponent could respond by casting a Braid after the transformation, and you not only lose what you transformed, but everything else that you sacked with it. Probably the worst part of it is the mana cost opportunity that you lose, because a lot of these crafting costs are pretty expensive, so you're just losing a turn by tapping out to try and craft something that gets blown up by such a common, easy to cast spell. And a lot of people will run a Braid because it has no downside. Because if they don't find an artifact target, they're going to find something with 3 defense, so it's just a no-risk artifact removal spell that any red deck's going to run. I still think crafting has good value. I'm not telling you to write it off because a Braid's there. In fact, I'm telling you, you can still craft, but you're going to need to be a little bit more sneaky and a little bit more aware of timing and how to play around a Braid. Crafting broadcasts that you're going to be crafting. So sometimes if you want to play around a Braid, maybe you hold off your best crafting spells until later when you're ready to craft it. The other way you can play around a Braid is give them a reason to cast a Braid on something else, like a creature that's a threat with 3 defense, or a different artifact that you'll craft with later from the grave. So if you're doing a lot of crafting, have threats that a Braid needs to answer maybe earlier in the game so you can still reclaim that late game value when everyone's top decking, and it's a little bit safer. Moving on to Descend. Descend is an interesting and confusing keyword because it can either refer to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard, or it can refer to how many permanent cards went to your graveyard that turn. We'll get into that difference later when we talk about the individual colors in the set, but overall, Descend is really good value and gives you some really good perks for putting things in the grave. I also want to take this opportunity to point out that tokens do not count as a permanent card entering your graveyard that turn, because Descend specifically says permanent card and tokens are not cards. Bummer. But you know what does go with Descend perfectly? Explore. Explore allows you to reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you put that card into your hand. So that's pretty great because it's card draw. I mean, that's draw 1 right there. And it's sort of quasi-ramp, but not really. But drawing an extra card's huge. But wait, then there's more. If it's not a land, you'll put a 1/1 counter on the creature that's exploring. Then you get a choice. You can either put that card back on top of your library, so you draw it next turn or whenever you draw a card next, or you can put it into your graveyard. So this is why this mechanic is so good with Descend, is that you can choose to put permanent cards into your graveyard if you so like for Descend, and you can do it off of your Explore. Or if it's just a really great card, you just leave it put, you get a 1/1 counter, and you'll draw it next turn. So Explore is extraordinarily powerful, and I'm glad to see it return. Speaking of value and how good something can be, Discover is in this set, and it's basically Cascade if you know what that is, but it's better because you can choose to cast the card that you hit off of it or not, depending on your situation. I think Discover is a fantastic mechanic that should never be underrated, and it is extreme value. The last thing that is in this set are finality counters, and Basically, it just means that if your creature has a finality counter on it, when it does die, it will become exiled instead. I don't think you should really care about that at all. More importantly, the permanent's back on the battlefield, right? If it exiles when it dies, fine. You already got the value off of it that's added. So, yes, there are finality counters. No, I don't expect those to matter too much. Now let's jump into my individual color analysis. Normally, I would start with white, but I want to save white for last for a very specific reason. So let's go ahead and just jump to blue instead. Blue is a really interesting color in that it really cares about descending to some degree. So if you're playing blue, you're going to want to hit descend threshold. But it doesn't care about how many times you descend in a single turn. It doesn't care if you take a few turns and you don't descend at all. It just cares about hitting the descend threshold. Blue also cares a lot about exploring, and blue is one of the best enablers for explore and descend in the set because it has a lot of ways of putting cards in the grave and milling yourself and card draw / discard. The payouts for descend aren't necessarily in blue. Some multicolor blue cards have great payouts, yes, and there are a handful of okay blue descend cards like these. However, blue really wants to be paired with black or green to make the most out of your descend. Blue also has its ability to support a flicker deck and flicker value, so ETBs become important. So keep that in mind. Blue is one of the main colors for pirates, so if you're looking to play blue-red, at some capacity, you're probably going to care about pirates and pirate synergy value. When you play blue in this set, what you're really getting is the fastest way to make descend hit a high number like 8. The self-mill is there, the card draw is there, the discard is there, the card filtering is there, so blue really does give you a good way of filling your grave. Black arguably cares about descending more than any other color. But black is finicky because a lot of the descend cards in black want you to descend every single turn. This makes any removal card or discard where it can be a permanent going to the grave a little bit better than it normally would be. Sometimes it cares how many cards you descended in a single turn. Sometimes it just cares that you descended once. Either way, black is the only color that cares about you descending every single turn or as frequently as possible. So when you're playing black, find outlets that allow you to put cards on grave almost every single turn on your curve. Whether you're sacrificing those permanents using white as a pairing color, or whether you're using blue to mill yourself, or you're using green for explore cards, or you're using red for your draw discard effects, have a plan for black to be able to get cards into the grave every turn, because if you're doing that, you're going to be doing what black really wants you to be doing. I'm going to skip over red and go straight to green, since green has more in common with black than red does, in that green also wants you to descend. I'm going to quickly call out the Basking Capybara. The Basking Capybara is like quintessential green common 2-drop. Yes, green is about dinosaurs. Yes, green's about doing something big, but look at the descend 4 and it becomes a 4/3 for 2 mana. That's a huge stat line, and I think it's going to be a really good important common for not only early game stabilization, but trading off late. Just a powerhouse card for common and green. Green is interesting because it really plays not only for descend, but green also gives you really good ramp, and it's really good at exploring. So green can kind of pair with white, 1/1 counter explore. Capybara in a green-white deck would be insane as well. Or green, you can go with the red-green dinosaur beatdown. I think that's a very, very strong deck. Really big cards and good ramp to support it. Or green and black and just go ultimate descend where, if you're descending, everything's going to be all good. I think green fits almost every single hat in this set. So if you're looking for versatility, I think green will have it and will be able to help you with whatever major theme or mechanic you want to do. Moving on to red, I think red is the single strongest color. When you look at red in this set, it's really easy for you to quickly see it and say, what does it not do, right? The removal's great, the burn's great, the battle tricks are great, the creatures are great, the dinosaurs are great. The pirates are great. The artifacts are great. The synergies with rummaging of discarding and drawing, that plays very well with Descend. There are quite literally too many good playable red cards for me to show all of them to you in this time frame. Red's ultimate thing that it cares about is Discover, which is just pure value, but that's not really something you even have to work at, right? I mean, you're going to hit a spell and then you get it for free, or you get to put it in your hand. I mean, it's amazing. So red is off the charts in terms of the power of the creatures that it has, the win cons it has, the removal and interaction it has, the battle tricks. It's just got it all. White is the most interesting color. You could almost argue that white doesn't care about any key mechanics in the set. That's right. White's doing its own thing. If you're playing white, I recommend focusing on 3 very simple things. Flicker value with your ETBs, 1/1 counter placement, as many as possible, and token creation. You really want to have a wide board state if you're playing white in this set. And the more tokens you can create, the better. And you can create more tokens if you're really synergizing well with your flicker value. So, white has some good things to offer there. The trade-off is it doesn't really help you with Discover, so if you're pairing red-white aggro, the Discover is going to come from red. So your white is really just going to be pumping up your red with 1/1 counters maybe, helping a little bit with artifact synergies or token creation. It's going to be doing other things like ETB doubling your Discover through Flicker. If you're playing white with black, I think you're going to have to be very mindful of black's desire to descend and that tokens don't trigger Descend. So a lot of times your sacrifice fodder usually wants to be tokens, but it's not going to help you with Descend at all. If you're going black-white, focus on the life gain. You're going to have a lot of rares and uncommons and mythics that care about life gain. Sacrifice decks that don't want to sacrifice tokens are always very difficult to balance. So just try and get your ratios right. Make sure you have enough fodder and you have enough payouts. I don't see a lot of sealed pools having the exact correct ratios for this to work, but it's possible. White-green is a really straightforward deck. It just cares about 1/1 counters, and white's really good at putting them there. So I think white-green is a really good matchup and really easy to make work. And then there's also white-blue, which is basically the Flicker artifact deck. I think it can be strong, but again, you're going to need some crucial cards in your sealed pool for it to work out. Okay, moving on. There are cave lands in this set, which help you splash and can give you some really good extra value with Discover later game. If you have a cave card that's in your color, I think you should consider putting it in your deck for sealed. I also think that too many caves might not be great. Cards that rely on how many caves you have might be a little bit of a trap, especially in sealed. I'm not sure how many caves you can realistically open up in a sealed pool, but I don't think it's going to be that many. So make sure that you're using your caves wisely. This set also has lands that become creatures, and those are always good. If you're playing those colors, put those in your deck. There are also land cyclers in this set, and unlike Lord of the Rings, the land cyclers in this set are 2 mana. So we're back to where March of the Machines was in terms of price for land cycling. I do think that means that they are definitely playable, especially when you consider that you're playing a Descend deck or a craft center deck. Obviously, Descend would trigger if you cycled a land cycler, but just keep in mind that they're there. I don't think you want to play too many of them, but I do think that they can make a lot of decks. There are many artifacts in the set that are very playable, so don't overlook the artifacts either in including them in your builds. Some are pretty bad, but some are pretty good. There are some fun win cons, not necessarily good win cons, and most importantly, there's a little bit of graveyard hate in the artifacts, and I don't think that that's that important, but depending on your matchup, if somebody is really going for Descend, being able to interact with that could buy you an extra turn or two. There's some good crafting material and equipments. Even Runaway Boulder isn't bad as a cycler in any deck. So don't overlook the artifacts. Some are very good. Similarly, there's a lot of equipment in this set. Like a lot of it. And there's some in every single color, and then there's also colorless equipment. I might consider running more equipment in this set than I normally would, even though equipment is slow and clunky, because 1, you might need ways to push through more damage since creatures can get pretty big pretty fast in the set, and 2, if it goes to the grave, it's still permanent in your grave for Descend and a lot of other triggers and crafting and all sorts of things. So I don't think that you should overlook the equipment as, it's equipment, I can't play it. I do think there is a place for some equipment in decks in this set occasionally. Lastly, this set features gods. There's a god in every single color, and they're very strong cards that really, you can't get rid of them very easily. You're going to need to exile it somehow. There's only a few ways to exile gods in this set. There are no ways in red and there are no ways in green to exile a god. So if you are in sealed and you find yourself against a god, keep in mind in your sideboard ways to put in more exile effects, such as Ray of Ruin or Quicksand Whirlpool. Dusk Rose even works. If you're playing blue, Eaten by Piranhas can do it. Counter Magic works, obviously. Kitesail Larcenous, it's a rare, but it would work. If you're playing black, a very bad way of removing a god would be Deep Cavern Bats, right? You would have to keep the bat alive for it to work, but you could technically prevent them from casting a god if they never killed your bat. And also another very bad roundabout way to kill a god would be with Malicious Eclipse. You'd have to obviously have damage before you do the -2/-2, but that would also exile if the -2/-2 finished off the god. So keep in mind that gods are strong cards that you might encounter, especially in sealed, and just note in your sideboard, like, what cards do you have to respond to them, because killing it is just not going to do it probably. Overall, I think it's a pretty straightforward set, and if you're doing what each individual color wants to do, and you're doing it well, I think you can't really go wrong. I hope to see you at my Twitch stream on November 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join the chat, and who knows, I might answer some of your questions live. Thanks for your support as always. Take care. See you next time.